Hi there, welcome to 5D TV. I'm Tania Kolar, your host. Today I'm joined by Bramma Smith, who is a yoga instructor. She's got some amazing tips to share with you. First of all, she's going to share her perspective on health and share with you tools and techniques to help you enhance your well-being and to quantum leap your personal growth. Emma, it's such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm really excited to talk about yoga. There are so many different types of yoga, and certainly it's not brand new. You can share the history of how long and how far it goes back. But let's talk first about what are some of the yoga types that you choose to do and that you prefer?
Well, my personal favorites, or certainly my first love, is Kundalini. Mm-hmm. That was how I was introduced to yoga, and we can get to that funny story later, maybe.
I think we definitely need to. I think that's a definite maybe.
Because Kundalini yoga is not what you expect. Most of us see yoga and think, oh, it's Sanskrit for look at me, I'm a circus freak. Right? It's not necessarily. Yeah. It's not always, but my first love is definitely Kundalini yoga, but I wound up falling in love with Vinyasa and Hatha and a lot of other practices along the way.
Okay, so the Vinyasa and the Hatha I think are a little bit more mainstream for most people. I'm not sure that everybody knows what Kundalini yoga is, so let's talk about all of them because maybe people don't know, but let's start with Kundalini. What is Kundalini yoga?
Kundalini yoga is one of the oldest yogas. It's the most recent, or it's the newest really to arrive here in the West. Mm-hmm. It was taught in secret amongst the yogis, mainly to keep themselves in balance between their own yoga classes and their own students. And then Yogi Bhajan in the 60s brought it to the West because he thought we needed some serious intervention. And
oh dear. Well, he was probably
right. And it's a very fast-acting yoga, so that was the main reason. He definitely did this under protest. People weren't thinking that this was a good idea for us, but it has helped a lot. And because of his work and because of the research that was actually done, Kundalini is used a lot in rehabilitation programs, mental, physical, drug rehabilitation programs, because the results are so quick. It was often called the yoga of the householder because the idea of Hatha yoga and most practices is that 22 years is the lineage towards enlightenment of your practice. Mm-hmm. And with Kundalini, they're sort of saying you can reach that within 2 years of diligent practice. Oh, wow. I haven't met a lot of 2-year practitioners.
Yeah, exactly. But we do live in an instant gratification society, right? So everybody wants quick results. So you mentioned results. What kind of results can we expect or see?
Because Kundalini targets the central nervous system first and foremost, you're going to work very quickly along the spinal column and along the glandular system. So it immediately realigns the glandular system and gets everything functioning faster. Once you hit the pituitary and you're using the pituitary, all the other glandular systems will follow and fall in line with that. So that develops very quickly. From my own personal experience, I was very ill when I was introduced to Kundalini, and I remember walking into my first class, sitting down, and I was propped at the front of the class by my friends who were very helpful. Thank you, Cynthia. And the yogi Harinam Singh actually had us put our hands up, roll our thumbs up, and do breath of fire. And he starts. I remember looking at all of them thinking, "You're a cult." And about 2 minutes into this, I was just like, yeah, I get it. I immediately got it and felt this rush of energy and felt much better. And I couldn't stop practicing. And once I realized how much better my body was doing when the opportunity came up to take a teacher training course, I had to do it.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing your personal experience. I know you've definitely had some health challenges, like many people at home watching who would experience that as well. Yoga, as you mentioned, is more than just physical. So what are some of the other benefits that we experience?
I think most people will relate to you that the relaxation benefit is there. That's absolute. You expand your mental capacity, you expand your capacity for calm, but you expand your learning ability. So I find that having your brain and your body and your mind oxygenated, having that peace of mind, getting that sort of empty space going where you can put new patterns in is incredibly helpful. The other thing that I find with Kundalini yoga is it's an alkalizing practice. So a lot of physical disciplines or a lot of physical exercise are acidic, which is fine, but the yoga or Tai Chi, any of these practices that are more gentle and more based on slowing your body down actually alkalize the body and create better physical balance internally.
That's so interesting. I think I know that we are familiar with alkalizing the body through diet, but not necessarily through exercise or through a yoga practice, right?
There's a simple yoga practice which takes you 3 minutes in a day, and it literally resets your alkalinity in the mornings.
Can you show us?
I can. It's actually kind of a funny little practice. So if you can sit cross-legged on the floor, that is great, but this is the other benefit about Kundalini. It is very adaptable. So somebody who is chronically ill or not even flexible will notice a difference in their abilities within 3 weeks, but you can place yourself in a chair or be at your office when you're doing all these things to freak out your coworkers. But this one is very simple, and you can literally just sit. Good. If you were sitting cross-legged, you'd have your hands on your knees. You're going to relax your breath. Good. The next breath that you take in, you're going to sip the breath. So you're filling up as much as you can, but you're sipping through a beaked mouth. Good. Then you're going to hold your breath or suspend it, and you're rocking in a U shape. So back and forth, left to right, and you rock that U shape. And you'll feel that as you do this, you've held your breath, and you can feel your stomach muscles, you can feel everything pushing against you. When you can no longer hold your breath, you come to center, and you slowly release the breath. You can do this 3 times, and then that exercise will actually reset your body.
Wow.
Feeling good?
Feel good. I feel amazing. This is so good. You know, it's amazing how movement really creates change in the body. You know, they say that movement is medicine these days, right? And many people are living more of a sedentary lifestyle. I think as we age, we tend to not be as active in some cases, or illness sort of sets in. So it's so important to have some sort of physical activity. And I think yoga is so universal. Yoga is for all ages. It has certainly been around for a long time. So let's touch upon the history of yoga, because I know you're an expert really in the field of yoga.
Far from it.
She's an expert.
That's very kind. Basically, that was the most simple history for you, was that Kundalini was such an old yoga and taught in secret, but you have Hatha yoga, and a lot of the yogas there developed year by year, and it actually came in 2 styles of yoga. A lot of the teachers, I think from my own experience, the more you practice something, the more you learn about it. So the knowledge is there, that is absolutely great, but when you're practicing something physically, even, how should I put this? We take a 40-day meditation often, so we'll choose a yoga set and experience it for 40 days. And then there are other sets that I've literally used in my life for now the past 20 years.
Wow.
There's a moment where you're just beginning to sit there and you're, oh, really? I've been doing this. And you have these moments, and you're suddenly teaching your students, and you can tell them every little chemical exchange that is happening because you've sat with this posture for so long. So that's wonderful. And then you've got people like Iyengar, and you've got all these yogis who had perfected the art and made those discoveries and then created a system of yoga that you could follow. The history itself, I don't know if we have time to go through several hundred years of yoga history, but the most simple way to put it is you've got everything originating from Hatha. Hatha is your baseline, and then moving out from there, you can either do Ashtanga, which is extremely physical and demanding, to Vinyasa, which sort of meets in the middle of being breath work and flow. Wow, there's everything. Iyengar.
Well, also hot yoga. I mean, you would have those types in the hot yoga as well, but just the hot yoga in itself is a different sort of, modality as well. It's really interesting because you had mentioned earlier about flexibility, and I find that hot yoga can really help with flexibility.
Absolutely.
And it's that kind of proud moment where you couldn't do before in the regular yoga class, and you're like, look at me bending forward and touching my toes, right? Yeah.
It's true. It's like getting up and making your bed in the morning. There's a tremendous sense of accomplishment at having something completed. So absolutely, when you make it all the way to your toes, or bruise your shin with your forehead. Some people do. There's a satisfaction, and there's a satisfaction of it as a teacher, because when you decide that you're going to become a teacher, you take an oath that your job is to put yourself aside and make sure that your students become 10 times stronger than you are.
Oh,
and I've enjoyed that. That wasn't hard to grasp the concept of. There's something so satisfying. I think my ego is probably really built up in knowing how many of my students have gone on to become yoga instructors.
Well, that's extraordinary, honestly.
That's fun.
You know, I remember doing yoga many years ago. I started off doing yoga, and I absolutely hated doing forward bends. Like I hated them, right? And then the funny thing is that, you know, several months down the road, I kept doing them, and all the other poses, of course, and I loved them. Then they became my favorites. So what I absolutely hated, I turned to love. And I thought that was kind of a really awesome moment for me personally.
I think that comes into when you were discussing learning the practices and the history, and that moment of realizing why you do something. So why you might have hated it. When you find out what those postures are actually geared to work on within your own system, there's a sudden, there's a sudden understanding. And it's very gratifying to know how far you've come from that. When I first picked up my first Kundalini book, it was kind of funny because I was way away in Kitchener. My friend had been ill and I'd been looking after her, and she wanted to take my mind off it for the day. So she had her boyfriend take me out for lunch while she was going through a treatment. And we walked past a bookstore, and I immediately walked in, picked a book up off the shelf, walked over to the counter and paid for it. And I have a habit of this. I'm not even a judge a book by the cover kind of gal. I just go in and get it.
You just go and say, what do I need today?
This is it. And it turned out to be this Kundalini yoga book. And I knew nothing about it. It said sadhana guidelines. And I remember taking it home and doing the first exercise from it, which was sort of sitting with one leg extended, arm up in a fist. And you're supposed to sit like this for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And in 30 seconds, I was in tears and couldn't hold my arm up.
Wow.
Closed the book, put it away, and walked away from it. When Cynthia took me to yoga class with Harinam Singh, I'll never forget it because I became so involved with it. And when I signed up for the teacher training, it turned out that one of our manuals we had to get was that sadhana guidelines book.
Wow.
And the posture that I couldn't cope with was about being kind to yourself and speaking respectfully towards yourself.
Wow. Oh my
And
goodness.
I find that that is a posture, I think it opened my eyes to what I was going to be doing with my teaching. I was fortunate. I had a home to work in, and I could teach small classes, which I really enjoyed. And I enjoyed it because the people who would come to me were actually suffering from chronic illnesses or were really shy, or they'd been through something that they didn't want to feel uncomfortable in a class. So it was nice to help them there. And the biggest thing that I find with yoga students is it's not that people walk through the door with an inflated ego. It's quite the opposite, and they put themselves aside or down. And that space, when they come into my house where I get to put the blankets on them or look after them instead, is really wonderful. It's wonderful to see the reaction. It's wonderful to see people grow.
I think that's a problem for a lot of people, that we tend to put ourselves last, or we don't feel that we deserve. So we have these things and these thoughts running through our mind. We're not good enough. We're unworthy. We're really hard on ourselves. That inner critic beats us up. So I love that you provide an environment where you can help people to learn to appreciate themselves and love themselves, essentially.
I think I'm lucky that honestly, bringing that environment in, the people walk in who not only blossom from it, they bring a lot to that environment. It's neat. You put that intention out there, and terrific people walk in and bond with each other within the classroom within a few minutes, and manage to be the perfect balance to each other, to whatever they're going through. So that's a nice thing about yoga.
So what about somebody who is a little bit skeptical? They've wanted to try yoga, they don't want to come because they feel that, oh, the competition, I can't do those poses, and look at that person with the perfect downward dog, and they're doing tree pose, and I can't even do like a proper, meditation at the end.
One of the first things to remind people of is your eyes are closed for most of yoga, so you don't know what everybody else is doing. And when your eyes are closed, or when you're struggling, when you were talking about struggling with a posture or your flexibility, There are a couple of great things about Kundalini. And it's funny because I've heard polar ideas about hot yoga. I love hot yoga, and everyone used to ask me, are you going to teach hot yoga? I was like, no, that antique house is mine and I'll wreck the floors. I have to keep it standing.
Precious wood, yeah.
That's right. That house was entrusted to me by whichever spooks were living in there first. And if I tick them off, they'll kick us out. But we do that. And a lot of people argue that if you're in hot yoga and you think you're more flexible, you're going to injure yourself. I've rarely heard of anyone doing that. So that's good. And a lot of that is up to you to decide how much you can handle, and a lot of that is your yoga instructor should be paying attention.
Right, okay.
But when it comes to Kundalini and people wandering in there thinking, I can't do this, basically within about 3 weeks, people notice that they've improved. And the people who go home and want to try doing it a little for themselves, within about 3 minutes a day, rapidly improve. And Kundalini works on heating your muscles. It's a lot of repetitive movement. So a lot of the time you've heated and elongated that muscle before you try to actually hold a stretch and be static.
So you're preventing injury essentially too, right?
It takes away a lot of the intimidation. You don't have to be perfect at this. You're just flowing, you're just working with it. And then absolutely, close your eyes. Don't worry about anybody else around you. And if it's a posture you can't do or feel that you're not coping with, take a break and literally stay in your mind and perfect the posture within your mind, because your mind is training your body. That connection is always there. So it makes it a lot easier.
That's interesting, right? Just to sit there with the mind, and because yoga is also very much about that mind-body-spirit connection. It's all related. So you might actually discover again those blocks and barriers as to maybe why you don't want to do that particular pose or what have you, or why you think it's difficult, and maybe it's not really difficult, but there's something there for you to learn and discover. So if we talk about Kundalini again, you had mentioned the spine. So how is that working, and where's the energy going?
That's good. The energy basically comes up from the earth. You're always, as a human being, you're an anchor for the earth and the sky, or the earth and the universe. Excuse me. So when you're drawing that energy up from the earth, it's moving through your spine, traveling up and exiting through the top of your head. Down from the universe, another spiral of energy is coming through you from your crown down to your root and into the earth. So you're suspended between these lovely spirals of light. It's almost like luminescent DNA or spiritual DNA that's forming inside your spine, or always there, and you're tapping it and making yourself aware of the connection. And then within the actual physical practice of it, the flexibility of your spine has a lot to do with your longevity as a person and your wellness. Or everybody's kind of obsessed with a fountain of youth. I have to say, there was a moment for me, getting sick was good for me, because a lot of your vanity has to be put aside. And you find out who you are as a person. Your hair doesn't make you who you are, your hands, your arms, none of it. And that was good for me. But the obsession with youth, I get it, but I will say I didn't have any credibility to people until I had a few more wrinkles. So the wrinkles are great for me. They helped. But the other side of it, I think your youth is your mental capacity, your energy, how you feel. And certainly for me, it's standing up straight. My health and well-being, I believe, is about whether or not I'm up straight, supporting my body, and by supporting my body, I can support my organs functioning properly. All of those things contribute to my longevity much more than a lot of external things. So that, I believe, is what yoga really offers. That kind of flexibility training. A lot of people, when they're worried about doing weight training and building a lot of muscle, you have to maintain that muscle as you get older. So doing something like yoga, which relies on your physical body, your own body weight, your own body strength, and you're creating and magnifying that within yourself, you can always carry that with you. You never have to get to a gym. You can always do that. And you're not creating something that you're going to have a great deal of difficulty maintaining as you get older. There's a balance.
I think that's really key too, because really yoga can be for a beginner, it can be for the expert, and anything in between, right? So you're going to work with wherever you are, right? So you work at your own pace, everyone can work at their own pace, which is great.
Welcome back to the studio here at 5D TV. I hope you are enjoying our special video presentation. While we still have a ways to go in the video, I wanted to stop for a moment and take you on a tour of the website 5D.tv. When you're on the website and you scroll down the main page, you will see categories like documentaries, alternative medicine, series, inspiration. All you need to do is click on one of those categories and it'll take you to another page where content is organized within that category. And then just click on a video or podcast that you want to watch or listen to. It's that easy. 5D.tv can be accessed literally anywhere around the world that is plugged into the internet, and you can use it on your iPhone, your iPad, and even laptop. You can watch countless hours of mindful content that's going to help nurture your personal development and your spiritual growth. And it's ad-free. Oh, and I do suggest that you have a notepad and pen handy when you're watching the content on the network, just in case you want to record any aha moments, insights, or revelations you get along the way. I hope that this brief introduction to our website, 5D.tv, helps you to navigate easily through it. And now let's get back to our Health and Wellness Summit.
So let's talk about, again, I want to go back to, you were talking about, helping to strengthen and build the spine. When we do, let's say, traditional exercises at a gym, it's always about the core. The core is equated to the rest of the body. So is that similar in the Kundalini aspect, where the spine is equated to the rest of the body and can help strengthen everything?
Actually, it's not much different. It really is the same. We focus very much on your energy comes from here. Your spinal support is going to come from your core, absolutely. And it's a lot about elimination as well.
Elimination.
If you're maintaining all that stagnant goo in your system, that's not going to help. So I always chuckle because if somebody passes gas in yoga class, it's actually great. That's good for you. Encouraged.
And there can be some bodily functions there, things are happening, all kinds of things, and that's normal, right?
But you're right, it is the same, that you are creating strength from your core, but there's a sort of misnomer that a lot of our physical power or strength comes from how great our heart rate is. That's important, but for us, we actually talk about your physical strength comes from your dantian, or the seed down here at your base. Our mental and emotional strength comes from here. So instead of thinking solely with our mind, a lot of our Eastern practices teach us that this is the greater mind. And then certainly for here, when you're thinking of physical strength, you spring up from your dantian.
That's incredible, and I love that you were talking about elimination, because I know that a lot of people today are experiencing dietary concerns and health issues from IBS, Crohn's, all kinds of just intolerances, right? And bloating is an issue, and we can hold 10 to 15 pounds of junk in there that needs to come out of the body. So I think that's a great option for some people who don't want to jump to medication to help them, right? I think it's a nice way to move things through the body.
Absolutely. I think there's the other side. There are a lot of people who actually can't maintain within their body. So slowing yourself down with a yoga practice, a lot of your elimination actually works best simply by first slowing down your breathing. A lot of your alkalizing comes from slowing down your breathing. That level of calm also helps you to create better decisions or stay with something. I think that's one of the hardest things, certainly for anybody who's thinking of how to deal with being faced with a new diet or faced with so many bodily changes. There are a lot of things that radically happen to people, and a lot of it is first you have to accept what's going on and be present with it. Then you have to try and figure out your solution, and a lot of your solution isn't going to come without gentle and slow progress. That's a really frustrating thing. So sitting there with your yoga, I can't even begin to express how wonderful it is when you're sitting there and images or visions or however it's going to speak to you happens, but there's something transformative for almost everyone. Even the biggest skeptic will find some kind of transformation, whether it's in the here and now or whether it's some hard to explain experience. It's there. And I was a science mind. I have to know why. So I really liked that Kundalini is described, certainly by Yogi Bhajan, as the science of the angles and triangles of your body. And yoga is very much that. When you start realizing that simply by holding a triangular posture or that downward posture you didn't like, you're actually activating so many systems within your own body. There's literal science involved.
That's really fascinating, and if we look at yoga as a whole, as you said, it sort of all yoga stems from hatha, and those same postures are the same postures that we're using today that have been affected, way back when. And also, I know that you had touched upon the secrecy aspect, right? They didn't want it to be shared. And typically you would have had to have gone to India for, 2 years. I think the minimum was 2 years, or at least 1 year to train with, a yogi master, right? And that was it. It wasn't like today how you see a ton of yoga businesses everywhere, right? It's much more mainstream now, and you're going for the physical aspect, but also, of course, the mental and spiritual aspect as well.
Absolutely. I think it's funny, I really wrestled with that for a while. There's the idea of, I'm not so comfortable with Eastern philosophy being Western business.
Right.
But you have to communicate with people the way they need to hear it. So there's something for everybody, and there's a yoga instructor for everybody. I'm pretty sure that people have walked into my class and gone, wow, there's not one stitch of Lululemon on her, come on. I know, and I'm like, dudes, I love their clothes.
She's an anomaly.
I love their stuff. I just don't have any at this point.
Yeah.
And I will confess that I actually wrestled. I mean, I was really lucky that I was too ill to go to India. So one of the most, I don't even know how to realize, one of the most learned Tibetan monks actually arrived here in Oakville at a time when I needed to learn. Or I was so sick when I started altogether, and I was privileged enough to learn from Harinam Singh Khalsa, who is the head of Sikh Dharma in Ontario, who's appointed by Yogi Bhajan and was a student of Yogi Bhajan. I had all these really crazy, lucky experiences, knowing that, okay, this lifetime, I have to learn how to be humble about being in a physical body, because for me it's challenging. And my path is about figuring it out and helping other people figure it out. So far, I have no idea what comes next. But I always thought it was really funny that for a while there I couldn't decide between being a Buddhist nun or a fashion designer. So I'm just as crippled by the Western culture as anybody else.
Kind of extreme.
It's like
exactly.
very extreme.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. But this is something that I think we all wrestle with, in some level, in some aspect of our lives, right? It sort of filters through. We always have the questions, and we want answers to those questions. And what I find fascinating about yoga, not just Kundalini yoga or Hatha or Vinyasa, just yoga in general, is that we have all of the answers within us, and I think yoga can help bring out those answers for us, right? A little bit more to put it to the forefront.
I think you're right, and I think we didn't touch on probably the most important aspect of yoga, which is the word itself means to unite or to yoke. One of the most important parts of certainly the practice in my class, and I think a lot of other classes, is your focus is not even on yourself. Those postures that you're struggling with, or the intention that you begin your class with every day, is that everything you're doing, struggle or not, will benefit somebody else as well. So as you improve, everybody else around you is either improving in what they're doing following you, or what they're doing in their own lives, that you're constantly praying to just make things a little more easy and gentle out there in the world.
Oh, I love that.
As you're finding your peace should radiate outward from you, and you become literally a source for anybody else who needs it.
Well, I find the whole concept fascinating, that you can literally do, postures, poses, and, experience all those multi-benefits, right? That sort of trickles through. And you, being a mom, are going to, be able to pass that down to your kids. Yeah, exactly. We sometimes be a little bit more patient with the kids, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. It's just really something I think an entire family can get involved with if you certainly choose that. Again, there's no age restriction on yoga. You don't have to have any sort of pre-knowledge. You don't have to be an expert. You come in and you start from exactly the place that you are, and where you are is exactly where you're meant to be.
That's it. Precisely it. It's a really comfortable feeling. And as for my family, well, actually, Rowan, my son, started out, I would still go into his room and practice my yoga in his room when he was little, before he woke up, so I could keep my 4 a.m. practice between feedings. And then he would literally snuggle or lie on my lap when I was teaching, to the point where he then started moving around the room and checking out all the ladies while I was teaching. He just had a great time. Love me, I'm a great
early.
kid.
I love it, yeah.
It was really funny. By the time he went to preschool, the teachers eventually asked me what he was singing, because he was singing mantras.
Oh, wow.
That's his, and he has a phonographic memory. It's the best way I can describe him. So anything that has music to it, Rowan will repeat to you perfectly. In fact, he corrects me quite often.
Wow.
And then Juniper came along, and I actually took a break. And I think this is one of the important things that people forget to tell you, or maybe just don't want to tell you. My teacher was very wise, and he warned me of it, and I didn't believe it until it was happening to me. And it was, I was in the thick of it before I really realized what was happening and finally caught it. And that is that you may love yoga, you may decide that this is your thing and you thrive on it, and there might be a day where you hit a wall. And you hit a wall because you don't want to face something in your practice. Or for me, that definitely was how it manifested. And I realized when Juniper was born, we'd gone through some heavy stuff in our lives. And for me even, it's so funny because some people have much heavier lives to go through. For me, this was heavy. And I didn't realize that I was suffering from depression until she was almost 2. And I had weathered through it, and I had managed, I thought, to keep it as much from the family as possible. You think you are. But by the time I was really in it, and it took me a long time to realize, I'd also been avoiding my yoga practice. That was when it fell apart. So the one thing that I knew I needed the most, I didn't want to go through, I didn't even want to release the anger, I think, that was leading to the depression. So all of those, it's hard to explain to people. There might be a day where you have to fight yourself to get to the mat. Mother Teresa said she went 30 years doubting her practice, but she still made herself through it. So I thought, okay, if Mother Teresa can do this, but it's hard, and people forget that not all of your yoga is pretty. In fact, dealing with yourself isn't pretty. Sometimes it's painful. So I think you have to have a lot of courage when you get to your mat as well. And it's wonderful when you finally get back to it. So that was the other side of it. I had a friend who was absolutely amazing, because when I met her, we were going through our teacher training and she had just started it, and she said, for my first 6 months of yoga ever, I hated every second. And I thought,
wow,
yeah, that's incredible discipline. There's no way. I was the kind of kid that if I wasn't good at it in the first 5 minutes, I couldn't see the point. So it was a definite weakness in my character that I had to work through. And Rambir Kaur said, I knew there was something in it that I needed. I knew it was good for me, and she kept going. And that really was what brought me out of my funk and got me back on my mat. This girl did it every day, hating every second of it. I need this, and I love it. When I'm back doing it, there's just an immense feeling of joy. Everybody's got their thing that they love. You know, I can feel for runners now. I used to look at runners and go, there's no way.
Yeah, you know, I think it's so important to find something that you love and do it, whatever it is. You know, you really deserve to have that love for yourself incorporated into your life, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody needs to do something for themselves, whatever it is. Now, yoga is ideal in a sense where you can do it at home. Right? Whenever you have some time. So can we get benefits from yoga if we do it for shorter periods, like 5 or 10 minutes a day?
You absolutely can. In fact, that's the whole point of Kundalini yoga. That idea of yoga in the enlightenment that we talked about, sort of yoga in the microwave, or enlightenment in the microwave, when we were talking in the beginning, is possible. Kundalini yoga was actually referred to as yoga of the householder, because you could practice 22 minutes a day or less to achieve your goal, or to work towards your ultimate goal. And so for women who were definitely maintaining the household and looking after everybody else, this gave them a practice that they could do and that they could fit into their lives. And it still rings true now. I think even with how far we've come in our society, we still have so many archetypes that are just following the same line. And women tend to put a lot on their plates. I think people do now in general. So saying to people, yeah, you can do this for 5, 10, 20 minutes. If you have 5 minutes and you're in your office and you're exhausted, you can pick a posture that will boost you up, bring your brain up into focus, get you moving. It's perfect.
And maybe even, you know, the breath of fire,
Absolutely,
or the
that's the
belly
one.
breath, anything, right? Get some energy moving in the body.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you can sort of make people peer around their cubicle just a
What's
little.
going on over there? What does she have for lunch?
That's it. I'm really grateful because when you asked before about my children practicing, even Juniper now practices her little version of yoga and does what she wants to do. I try not to force it.
Right.
So they're finding their own way with it. But I was really grateful for that because I chose things like martial arts or soccer or things that they could get involved with that required minimal equipment. And you could always find yourself taking that with you. And yoga was the same. I really hoped they would choose yoga because you can take it with you and it gives you such a sense of well-being and calm.
Yeah, and I think also confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, building
Absolutely.
confidence, especially I think for kids, when they can see that they're good at something, right? It builds that confidence, and then that can translate into many other areas, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's ideal to get the kids involved as early as possible. If they're interested, don't force them because they're going to hate it. Won't be happy with you.
It's fairly commonplace
Yeah.
in the school. So I'm lucky. My kids are both primary right now, so their teachers are still heroes. They're not fighting their teachers just yet, and I hope their teachers will always be their heroes. You always find a teacher that's wonderful, and right now it's great because yoga is being taught at the school, and my son loves it. He got to be yogi for the day. He got to be the yoga master in his class.
All right, maybe he's going to follow in his mom's footsteps, right? So can you tell everybody how can they become a yoga instructor if they're interested in that?
Wow, there are so many. I would say first, use that thing called the interweb, the Google. Google, absolutely. Ask. Look for a few places in your town because right away, as soon as you go into a yoga class, if you find a teacher that you love working with, ask them. Ask them if they're going to be doing teacher training or ask them where they took their teacher training. That's a great start. Everything that's happened to me, people would ask me, why did this happen? This is so great. I said, I asked. It's that simple. You know, one of my paintings was actually presented to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
thank you.
That's huge. That's an honor.
It was an honor. It was huge because I'm a control freak. And so I came into yoga because I probably would have torn myself apart without it. That was an intervention.
Yoga helps with being a control freak as well. Yeah, it does.
And I was actually at a time when it happened, I'd had a vision years before and then was brought full circle and told, I said, I have this picture I want to give to His Holiness. And the woman said, okay, we'll bring it to him and we'll get it there. And it turned out she had been an attendant of his and worked at his side. And so that was going to be arranged. And then it actually fell apart and fell back together in the most amusing way. But I was really proud of taking it because the control freakish person allowed as many people as possible to help make that painting. So to have their own paintbrush on that painting. And when I finally got it to him, I think the note even said, I wasn't asking for anything for myself, but could he please bless everybody who touched that painting? And he certainly did. He certainly, it's an incredible experience, and that's that whole yoga and connection and unity. There's this gentleman, this Buddha, living out there who can connect with every being and make thousands of people feel like the only person he's talking to in that moment and reach every single person in that moment. And I know that's really hard sometimes for people to accept, but I've seen too many things happen to discount it. And I always think it's very funny when he'll announce, I'm just a monk. Well, I've lived with a few monks and there's no such thing as just a monk.
Yeah.
No such thing. Certainly not in the Dalai Lama's case, but not with any of the gracious, incredible human beings that I've met. But I meet an awful lot of yoga students who might just be monks in secret.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know, right? Whose life you can impact from the words that you speak, from the actions that you take, from what you teach other people. I think it's phenomenal to come into contact with people like that who are willing to help others.
I think so. And I think anybody who wants to teach and who wants to find out how to be a yoga instructor, I think the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, are you willing, not just to put everyone, like to put your ego aside, are you willing to make somebody 10 times better than you? It's kind of like, are you willing to remember every day that it's a privilege to teach. It's a privilege to get on that mat, and not a single person comes into that yoga studio for me to teach yoga to that isn't equally giving as much back, you know, and making me a better person by getting to know them. It's been incredible. I've been very lucky.
So great, so great. Now, just one quick question about, I know that you mentioned sort of, you envisioning, you saw the picture going to the Dalai Lama, fabulous. But what about visualization? Is there an aspect of that within yoga?
Absolutely. When we talked about if you can visualize yourself doing the posture, but there are all kinds of different visualizations, and Kundalini uses so many mantras and visualizations while you're working through the postures, and it's an incredible feeling. It sort of takes you elsewhere without cheating, and by that I mean people will sort of say to me, with meditation I thought you're supposed to think about nothing and be nowhere and be, and no, that's a little nihilistic. And it's actually counterproductive. Meditation and slowing yourself down, and even in your Kundalini practice, for me it was great. There's meditation, and for myself, a lot of my learning or a lot of my messages come through the physical activity, come through connecting with my body. I was very disconnected with it, and that's part of my physical challenges here. And I find that with a lot of people. So when you're using the visualizations and physically connecting with your body, you're not going elsewhere. You are becoming more grounded and more focused. When you go to those other places, it's through a clear mind. And a clear mind isn't something empty. You're becoming aware of your thoughts, and you're seeing all of the cyclic thoughts you use, all of these repetitive thoughts, and you can pick and choose the thoughts that are beneficial to your being and the thoughts that you need to just relax and let go. That clear sky mind isn't a mind without thought. It's a mind without destructive thought. It's a mind with cohesive, unified, loving thoughts towards yourself and every living being.
Positive thoughts that are working for you, not against you.
Yeah, and for everyone else.
Yeah,
for the benefit of all beings. That is your practice. When you can achieve that, and it doesn't happen all the time. Road rage is a real thing.
Yes.
For anyone, it's okay. It is okay not to be perfect, but when you get on that mat, you have those spaces, and you carry a little bit more of them every time you leave the mat, and that's a good feeling.
And just an opportunity while you're on the mat to let all the stress and the tension from your day subside, melt away, forget about it in that moment, right? Yeah.
Those are those thoughts you no longer need.
Exactly. Well, this has been an amazing hour, and thank you so much for enlightening us all on Kundalini Yoga and Hatha and Vinyasa and all of it. I think it's really fascinating, and again, the science behind yoga, right? Yeah, there really is a lot of science. Can you tell everyone how they can find you?
Okay, I'm very delinquent about that, but I'm working on it. So you can find me on Facebook, believe it or not, at Emma Pada Studio. And you can also find me at Emma Bramma Smith. I think it's actually Emma Frances Bramma Smith. And I teach yoga at the spa at Bell Fountain in Erin, which is a big mouthful. But if you can follow that, the spa at Bell Fountain in Erin, you can find them on Facebook as well, or at their website. And I do still have an art website. I'm working on a new one. Emma Pada Studio is on its way as an art website as well as yoga. And then emmabrammasmith.com is still there. So if people need to reach me through that, but I would definitely say come down to the spa at Bell Fountain.
Yes.
Smell all the beautiful oils and have a yoga class.
Oh, it sounds good,
right?
Incredible. I think we all need to go. So Bell Fountain in Erin or Erin?
Erin, that's right. Sorry, everybody in Erin. I'm not a native Erinite. That's how you say it, and you don't actually. You're not from Erin until you've been there about 10 or 15 years, and remember to actually change that.
That's so funny.
Tone.
That's so funny, and I only knew about that, before this interview. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video interview, and if you'd like to watch more videos like this, please go to our website at www.5d.tv and subscribe to one of our memberships there. By supporting us, you are allowing us to continue to produce amazing video content that is meaningful and can help supercharge your personal growth. Thanks, and have a fabulous day.